So we begin today with a Timberwolf who's sort of like the Rodney Dangerfield of the NBA, as he gets no respect at all from the national media. This 7'1" French native actually pulled off an around-the-back pass in the fourth quarter of tonight's victory at home against the Cleveland Cavaliers. Rudy Gobert has also, in his last 13 out of 14 games, grabbed at least 10 rebounds. And to be frank with you all, Rudy Gobert is one of the primary reasons this Minnesota Timberwolves team has been playing as well as it's actually been playing. And looking at the stats since Thanksgiving, the Timberwolves are now 15-5, which, by the way, is the best record in the NBA. Welcome back to the Timberwolves Digest, as always, North America. I'm Dave Dabbah, and I bring you daily Minnesota Timberwolves news, trade reports, trade rumors, and, of course, a little bit of commentary on the side. New to the Timberwolves Digest, please go ahead and subscribe. We're closing in on 1,000 subscribers. Now, as you all know, I like to start every show out by asking you all a question. And on tonight's show, I want to know, do you think Rudy Gobert has a legitimate chance to actually win this year's Defensive Player of the Year award? Now, remember, you have to play in so many games to actually be eligible for the award. So a player like Wemby, who's already missed a ton of games, might not ultimately be eligible at the end of the season. We'll just have to all see how it all plays out. But like in tonight's game, in which the Timberwolves ended up beating the Cleveland Cavaliers 131-122, it was great to see Rudy in the fourth quarter as well as the third quarter, which quite frankly was the best quarter of the season, at least in my opinion, so far for this Timberwolf team. 43 points, and the defense was absolutely phenomenal tonight, at least in the third quarter. Things certainly got a little bit different in the fourth quarter. But Gobert actually did not have any blocks tonight, though he certainly made players adjust their shots numerous times while in the key. We'll get into more of tonight's game. I also want to spend a lot of time tonight talking about just how great Rudy Gobert has been playing for our Minnesota Timberwolves. Go ahead and drop your comments in. But before we dive into today's Timberwolves news, this video is brought to you by Kalshi. Download Kalshi by using the link below and enter code DIGESTNBA, and you'll get $20 when you trade your first 100. Kalshi is the largest prediction market in the U.S. On the platform, you can trade yes or no on real-time events like sports, elections, news, and pretty much anything. And whether you're in California or Texas or anywhere else in the country, Kalshi is now available in all 50 states. For sports fans, trade on game outcomes, playoff chances, or player performances, all on a regulated market where you can cash out at any time. Personally, I see real value in the Timberwolves winning 55-plus games. Remember, they won 56 games last season. So look, Kalshi is generally a smarter way to use your sports or news knowledge. And of course, you can close positions whenever you want. Download Kalshi with the link in the description. Don't forget to use code DIGESTNBA to get your $20 bonus. Once again, I want to thank Kalshi for sponsoring today's video. So I wanted to tip things off by talking about just how good Rudy Gobert has been so far this season. Now, 1.7 blocks per game, 11.2 rebounds. Now, I have both of those statistics at the top of this particular slide simply to point out that when we think of Rudy Gobert, of course, we think of him as a defensive player. I mean, nobody has on their bingo card that Rudy Gobert is actually going to lead the NBA in field goal shooting percentage, which, by the way, he actually is this season. We'll cover a little bit more of that in just a little bit, but taking a quick look back at what went down in the Timberwolves victory, Jaden McDaniels had a fantastic game tonight, put up a significant amount of points, 26 points, and of course, Julius did what Julius does, and so did the Ant-Man, and it was, of course, good to see Dante get back on track. But when I look at all of this, I think it's a completely different game if Rudy's actually not playing. I think when we talk about the amount of rebounds he had and the steals and everything else he did to force the Cavaliers to feel at least uncomfortable for 3 out of 4 of the quarters, Gobert was certainly a big part of that. Now, this is a quote from Dane Moore. I think it's the biggest development of the entire season for the Timberwolves. As good as Anthony Edwards is playing, it's that Rudy Gobert looks like an offensive problem. Who should have no problem staying on the floor in the playoffs. Fantastic quote right there on K-Fan a little earlier in the day. Now, I teased this a little bit earlier, but Gobert actually does lead the NBA in field goal shooting percentage, a career high 72%. And of course, he's dunking the ball a lot. He has more assists, 65 at this point, than block shots, 62 for just the second time in his career. And no one has thrown down more dunks than his 101. And this was all before tonight's game. So far this season, I have to say, watching Rudy play, especially since Thanksgiving, it is a key reason this Timberwolves team, and of course there's going to be ups and downs throughout a season, and as I mentioned last week, the sky is not falling on this Timberwolves team after the loss in Atlanta. It was just merely a blip on where we're at as a team at this point. Love to get your thoughts and opinions on Rudy as well as the rest of the Minnesota Timberwolves and how well they're actually playing at this point. Please go ahead and drop your comments in when you have a chance. Now, taking a look at where Rudy is so far this year against where he was in the 23-24 season, which was the last time he won a Defensive Player of the Year award. Now, Rudy's already won 4 DPOYs, and I think when we look at where he's at this point, he certainly looks like a player that realistically has a shot at potentially getting another one of those awards at some point this season. Now, where does Rudy currently sit in the DPOY ratings? And this came out just a couple days ago. Minnesota native Chet Holmgren is currently the odds-on favorite to actually win it all. When you look at these stats, Chet certainly scores more points per game. I think he's averaging around 18. And when we talk about the amount of blocks, they're basically a wash at this point, 1.7 to 1.8 for each of them. But the big difference, at least from a defensive perspective, is the amount of rebounds that Rudy's actually pulling in every game against Chet. And so when I bring that up, and I could look at the rest of these players on this list as well, and we start to get to that point where I start to wonder, is he truly the Rodney Dangerfield of the NBA at this point? Because he's getting no respect from Vegas as well when it comes to this particular award. But for those of us that follow the Timberwolves day in and day out, and then if we were to put a matrix together, Gobert should at least be in the top 3 just from a statistical standpoint when we're talking about the defensive stats. Love to get your thoughts and opinions, North America. Please go ahead and drop them in when you have a chance. Also, once again, if you are new to the Timberwolves Digest, thanks so much for tuning in. Please go ahead and subscribe. As always, for the Timberwolves Digest, I'm Dave Dabbah, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.